I knew Greg was going to steal something someday. I just didn't think it'd be my legacy. Not until I saw him pretending not to understand the HDMI cable I'd already plugged in, his fingers twitching like a raccoon caught near a glittery purse. But that wasn't the beginning. The beginning was worse. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, and I was sitting in a cold cubicle surrounded by empty La Croix cans, reeking of white peach and career desperation. The office was dark except for the glow of my dual monitors and the pathetic flicker of the vending machine trying to sell stale Pop-Tarts like it was a side hustle. I was finalizing the last draft of a proposal I'd poured 6 months of my life into, a lean ops strategy that would save our biggest client enough money to buy back their integrity from Wall Street. No layoffs, no fluff, just smart cuts, rerouted logistics, and something called competence, which, around here, had gone the way of fax machines and decent coffee. That file was my lifeboat. It had version tags buried so deep not even IT could screw them up, with encrypted time logs and revision breadcrumbs synced to a private cloud folder no one knew existed except me, my dog, probably, and an expired sticky note under my keyboard. I named the final draft "We Are Still Invisible V7 Final this time, I swear." Now, before we go further, 97% of y'all listening to these stories haven't hit the follow button. That's like attending a dinner party, eating the entire lasagna, and leaving without even pretending to do the dishes. So if you're into office drama served with petty justice and microwave revenge, tap that follow. It feeds the algorithm gods and keeps our small but spiteful team running on caffeine, gall, and dreams of unionizing. Back to Greg. Greg, my boss, is the kind of guy who says let's circle back while holding a vape pen and a protein bar, like he's buffering through life at 1.25x speed. He wears startup hoodies despite us being a legacy firm, and he calls himself a thought leader because he once reposted a TED talk on LinkedIn with the caption "Big if true." He came from marketing. You know the type. I've worked in this department since PowerPoint had a paperclip. 20 years of quietly fixing what others broke, streamlining reports, smoothing over client fires, and building efficiencies no one noticed, except when Greg needed a team win for his quarterly review. Then suddenly, my ideas would surface as something we've been exploring on the leadership level. Leadership being him, level being shallow end. But I kept at it. This new plan, it could change everything. The client, Tyrex Global, had been bleeding capital for years, hemorrhaging it into overpriced logistics contracts and redundant supply chains like it was a hobby. I found the choke points, diagrammed the patchwork hell of their procurement, and built a solution that trimmed fat without cutting muscle. I even made color-coded dashboards and client-specific KPIs, the kind that made execs feel like they understood math again. And I told no one, not Sheila from HR, who always accidentally forwarded my files to the wrong people. Not Ben from finance, who once printed my draft and left it in the break room like it was a takeout menu. Not even Nia from procurement, my closest cubicle ally. Because I knew the second this hit the shared drive, Greg would swoop in like a seagull at a beach picnic. Instead, I worked off a secure cloud instance, locked behind a VPN and enough passwords to confuse the NSA. I drafted slides in my own sandboxed PowerPoint environment. I even tested the formatting on an old laptop at home because I didn't trust the office Wi-Fi, or more specifically, I didn't trust Greg's sudden interest in tech literacy workshops. To be fair, the man had a sixth sense for sniffing out unclaimed success. If excellence had a scent, he followed it like a bloodhound in loafers. Lately, he'd been hovering near my cube more often, dropping by with fake nice lines like "burning the midnight oil, huh?" or "big client meeting soon, hope we're all aligned." His eyes always landed on my second monitor, one I'd angle away from the hallway like it owed me money. And the big meeting was coming. Tyrex's annual Q3 review. The kind of event where if you pitch right, you get invited to client retreats in Napa. Pitch wrong, and you're moved to special projects, which is just HR code for waiting out your dignity in a windowless office. I had one shot, one airtight file, one bullet in the chamber, and I wasn't planning on missing. What I didn't count on was Greg being just desperate enough to pull the trigger first. The invite hit inboxes like a meteor. Tyrex Q3 Strategic Review Mandatory Attendance. Greg immediately scheduled a prep call and added 17 bullet points to a shared agenda that somehow said absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, I stared at the subject line like it had teeth. This was it, my shot. The kind of meeting where careers shifted like tectonic plates. Someone always rose, someone always fell, and someone always left crying in a stairwell with a half-eaten bagel. I didn't tell a soul, not even Nia, who once slipped me her cold brew punch card when I looked like I was 5 minutes from cardiac arrest. Not Kyle from accounting, who once walked all the way to my desk just to warn me my blouse was on inside out before a board presentation. I love them, but this proposal was sacred. It had been born in silence, sweat, and stress snacking through 3 fiscal quarters. It deserved a clean launch, untainted by office gossip, forward happy Slack threads, or Greg's strategic plagiarism instincts. Greg, however, had the sniffles. Not the sick kind, the smelling blood in the water kind. He started popping by my desk under the pretense of staying in sync. He'd lean casually on the divider like a mall Santa and ask things like, "Everything good, Marla? Need any eyes on anything?" Translation: "I smell a deliverable and I want my name on it." His favorite trick was offering me a breather. Said he'd cover my morning call with procurement so I could grab some air. What a guy. Meanwhile, every time I got up to stretch, his lizard eyes darted to my unlocked screen like it owed him child support. I started clicking Windows plus L like it was a tick. I even positioned my coffee mug so the steam fogged part of the monitor. Petty? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. The paranoia wasn't hypothetical anymore, it was tactical. Greg had done this before. Last spring, he accidentally forwarded my analytics summary to the C-suite with his own intro paragraph, framing it as a cross-departmental collaboration. That collaboration didn't include my name, of course, just his selfie from the last client golf event and a smiling emoji that somehow made it worse. Now he was circling again, the way hawks do when they've spotted a limping squirrel. I worked late every night that week, staying just long enough that the cleaning crew started nodding at me like we shared a shift. My badge logs probably read like I lived in that damn building. But it had to be perfect, clean charts, digestible data, and a pitch narrative that made sense even to the attention-deficient execs who spent most meetings Googling wine subscriptions. The Friday before the review, I printed one copy of the deck, just one, and sealed it in an envelope marked Client Strategy Notes Confidential. Then I locked it in my bottom drawer, which required a key I wore on a chain around my neck like a medieval librarian. The digital version lived in my cloud account, two-factor authenticated, encrypted, and watermarked with invisible tags that would trace every edit back to me like digital DNA. Greg would have better luck stealing the moon. And yet, at 3:47 p.m., Greg hovered again, sipping his awful protein shake and eyeing my post-its like they contained national secrets. So, he drawled, "Big review coming up. I'm thinking we open with something punchy. Maybe a bold, cost-cutting angle. Got anything brewing in your world?" I smiled like a statue and said, "Just refining some dashboards." He nodded, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. That's when I knew he didn't know what I had, but he knew I had something, and he was already scheming. You could see the wheels turning behind his forehead, creaky and underlubricated, trying to reverse engineer brilliance by proximity. I stayed calm. I stayed vague. But inside, the anxiety buzzed like a fluorescent bulb about to blow. This plan could change everything if it stayed mine. One slip, one USB left plugged in, one unguarded moment, and it'd be Greg up there taking bows while I stood in the back, applauding my own execution. Monday was the meeting, and I had 3 days to survive without blinking. The HDMI cable was already plugged in. I knew that because I had plugged it in. Twice. Tested it the night before on both input ports, even brought my own backup adapter from home in case the conference room tech decided to play dead like it usually did. But here came Greg, all smiles and fake urgency, holding a rolled-up presentation agenda like he was about to conduct an orchestra. "Hey Marla, mind if I use your laptop real quick? Gotta check the cable before the execs walk in. You know how these rooms get." I opened my mouth to say no, but before the sound even left my throat, a familiar ping echoed across the room. My name, HR Slack. Quick check-in before client arrival. Should only take 5, and that was the moment. That damn perfect storm. One Slack message, one fake cable issue, one bastard boss in all birds with grabby hands and a hero complex. I paused, then nodded. "Sure, I'll be right back." I stood, I walked out, I died a little. At the time I got to the HR pod, where Marcy from compliance asked if I had any fun weekend plans, my gut already knew. My skin felt hot, like betrayal was radiating through my pores. When I returned, the laptop was closed. Greg was gone, and the USB port was empty. The next 3 minutes were a blur. I joined the team in the boardroom, hands clutching my planner like a lifeline. Greg stood at the head of the table, chatting it up with Tyrex's CFO and our CEO like he just invented fire. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. And then he opened the file. Slide 1, Strategic Cost Streamlining Initiative presented by Greg Milson, VP of Business Innovation. I blinked, swallowed. Slide 2, a slightly rebranded version of my dashboard color scheme. Muted gray instead of cobalt blue. Same axes, same diagrams, different font. Slide 3, the logistics reroute model I'd mapped out at 2 a.m. on a Saturday while crying into instant ramen. Slide 4, my supplier integration flowchart, rotated 90 degrees like that somehow made it his. He was presenting my plan, my words, my framework, dressed in different clothes and wearing his smug face like a $200 mask. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the clicker out of his hand and throw it through the window. I wanted to shout, "He stole this. I built it, that's my damn slide." But I didn't, because here's the thing about being a woman who's been gaslit by mediocrity for 2 decades. You learn that speaking out too fast just makes you the problem. You're emotional, you're overreacting, you're making it about yourself. Greg had left just enough plausible deniability, his branding, his edits, his stupid serif font to muddy the water. If I spoke up right then, I'd look like the one trying to hijack the meeting, so I sat. I sat with my hands folded and my teeth clenched so tight my molars felt like they'd crack. I watched execs nod and murmur smart and clean approach and very agile thinking. I watched Greg soak in their praise like a lizard basking under a heat lamp. I smiled. I took notes. I acted like nothing inside me was dying. And then I waited, because maybe I didn't stop the theft in the act. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. I had fingerprints, I had logs, I had a digital trail longer than a CVS receipt, and I had something Greg didn't, a very long memory, and no more patience. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and lies. Greg was holding court near the donuts, retelling the same origin story he recycled every quarter, something about a consulting gig in Singapore that probably involved him getting lost in an airport food court. Meanwhile, I stood near the window with a paper cup full of decaf, and the hollow echo of my own genius getting clapped for under someone else's name still ringing in my ears. My fingers were trembling so hard I spilled a little on the sleeve of my blazer. No one noticed. They were too busy fawning over Greg's fake humility and dodgy data. I stared out at the parking lot, thinking maybe I'd just leave. Walk out. Let him have it. The plan, the job, everything. And that's when Elaine appeared. Elaine Chen, CFO of Tyrex Global, walked like someone who'd been underestimated for 30 years and had made peace with it by weaponizing spreadsheets. She had a resting expression like a tax audit and eyes that saw everything. She also happened to be the only exec I'd ever spoken to off the record, the kind who didn't talk down, didn't interrupt, and once told me over box Chardonnay at a leadership retreat, Marla. There's two kinds of power in business, the kind that shines and the kind that burns slow. Guess which one lasts longer? She walked straight up to me like she was aiming a sniper rifle. That strategy, she said, voice low, eyes locked on mine. Those cost routing diagrams, I blinked. They look very familiar. You sure you're not behind them? My throat tightened. I glanced sideways toward Greg, who was now laughing too loud at something no one else found funny. The entire boardroom still buzzed from his dog and pony show. Saying anything here would have been suicide. But Elaine didn't need a speech. I nodded just once, slow, controlled. Elaine studied me for a beat, then smiled like a blackjack dealer holding 4 aces. She sipped her coffee, stepped a little closer, and said, "Thought so." Then she turned and walked off. No dramatics, no follow-up, just that. But it was enough. The floor shifted beneath me just an inch. Just enough, something cracked in the ceiling of my despair, and for the first time since Greg hijacked my oxygen, I could breathe. Elaine knew. And if she knew, that meant Greg's tightrope walk over borrowed brilliance just got a lot more precarious. I didn't smile, not outwardly. But somewhere deep in the back of my mind, a switch flipped. I didn't know what Elaine had in mind, but I knew this wasn't over, not even close. He'd stolen my work, my pride, my damn name. But now I had a witness. And if Greg thought I was going to just sip decaf and move on, he was about to learn what slow-burning power really looked like. I didn't sleep that night, not because of panic, but because everything had gone quiet inside me. That eerie, surgical silence that comes right before the incision. No more spiraling. No more pacing the kitchen with wine in a coffee mug. Just ice water calm and a checklist humming behind my eyes like an old refrigerator. Step 1, metadata. I booted up my laptop at 3:17 a.m. and dove into my version control system, my little fortress in the cloud. Every edit I'd made to that proposal had been timestamped, hashed, and saved with redundant logs across 2 secure servers. I added a final tag, unauthorized access suspected C diff logs v6v8, and I exported the log into a clean PDF, encrypted it, and stored it in a folder called birthday photos. Step 2, trail of breadcrumbs. I opened our internal help desk portal and submitted a casual ticket to IT. Hey folks, noticed some weird access times in my cloud backup logs. Any chance someone tested remote login protocols yesterday? Not urgent, just curious. Thanks. I knew Dave from IT would look into it. Dave loves 2 things, spicy Cheetos and tracking irregular logins. If Greg had copied the file from my machine or logged in remotely, Dave would find it like a pig snuffling out truffles in a field of bad passwords. Step 3, Elaine. At 8:06 a.m., a soft ping lit up my inbox. From Elaine Chen, subject, Tyrex strategy follow-up discussion. Marla, I'd like to schedule a follow-up to yesterday's presentation. Are you available at 9:30 tomorrow? Elaine, simple, direct. No CCs, no fluff. The kind of email that doesn't ask, it tells. I hadn't even opened my calendar before the next ping came in. From Greg Milson, subject, Tyrex strategy follow-up discussion to Elaine, C-suite distribution list. Thanks for looping me in, Elaine. Happy to present again and walk through additional metrics tomorrow. Best, Greg, he'd added the entire C-suite. I stared at that line, happy to present again, like it was a lit fuse. He had no idea Elaine was aiming the matchbook directly at him, and that's when the shift happened. The moment I stopped being the woman behind the curtain, terrified of pulling it back. I spent the rest of the day preparing, not for battle, but for precision. Quiet revenge is just maintenance with better posture. I printed the version log, 2 copies. I compiled the email threads, the initial draft with the hidden footer prepared by MM. confidential. The original timestamp file name, complete with my encrypted watermark. I even included the IT ticket receipt and flagged login anomalies on my cloud account that occurred while I was in that convenient HR meeting. Every piece of it calm, clinical, no angry rants, no emojis, just the dull weight of proof. I walked into the office the next morning with the same face I always wore, competent, pleasant, ignorable. Greg gave me a wink and said, "Let's wow them again today, partner." Partner? I smiled and said wouldn't miss it, because today I wasn't the deck builder. I was the architect of collapse, and Greg, he'd already stepped onto the trapdoor. Greg started twitching around 8:02 a.m. The client breakfast was invitation only, Tyrex brass and a handful of senior execs from our side. Normally, I wouldn't have been within sniffing distance of that croissant tray. But when the invite pinged, sent directly from Elaine's executive assistant with my name on the calendar block, I didn't blink, didn't gloat, just clicked accept and kept sipping my terrible breakroom coffee like it was holy water. Greg's head popped over my cubicle wall like a prairie dog on Adderall. He smiled that too wide smile that never touched his eyes. "Morning, just saw the breakfast invite. Looks like you're coming too, huh?" I gave him a measured nod. Apparently, he hovered. I could smell the panic in his Old Spice. "That's great," I was actually thinking. "We should probably start looping you in more directly on the Tyrex stuff going forward. You've got great instincts, and obviously, you've been really valuable behind the scenes." Behind the scenes. Translation: you're not supposed to be on the stage with me. I jotted a quick note on my desk notepad as he spoke, timestamping his babble like a stenographer in a trial I hadn't been invited to yet. Then I looked up, smiled just enough to be polite, and said, "Appreciate that." He hated that. The calm, the non-reaction. Greg feeds on the emotional feedback loop, the panic, the flattery, the need. When he doesn't get it, he starts to spiral. By the time we were walking toward the executive suite, he was muttering to himself about aligning talking points and whether he should open with the procurement sequence or just let the numbers speak. His eye kept flicking toward my folder like it was ticking. Then HR pinged me again, another Slack. "Hey Marla, can we grab 10 minutes today to discuss upcoming team adjustments? Just to check in." I stared at that smiley face like it owed me rent. Greg saw me reading the message and asked too casually, "Everything cool with HR?" "Yeah," I said, "just updates." He nodded, but his jaw clicked. I heard it, a tiny tick in the silence between our footsteps. At the breakfast, I sat at the far end of the table, right between Tyrex's director of ops and their head of vendor relations. Elaine sat across from me. No one told me to move. No one asked why I was there. No one questioned my folder. Greg opened with a joke, something about Zoom fatigue and coffee ifs. It landed with a dull thud. Elaine didn't even pretend to laugh. Instead, she looked directly at me and said, "Marla, I'd love for you to walk us through that supplier streamlining concept again, especially Section 4. We had some follow-up questions." Greg's fork froze mid-bite. "Just a second, just long enough." I tilted my head, happy to. He laughed too quickly. "Of course, Marla's been instrumental. We're a real tag team on this initiative." Lane raised an eyebrow like a sword. That was the moment Greg started sweating. Not much, not visibly. But you could feel the shift, the way his voice got tighter, how he started interrupting me just a fraction too fast. He could feel it, the ground crumbling, the audience shifting. He offered to take the lead, I deferred. He insisted, I let him. Every time he opened his mouth, he dug a little deeper, adding phrases he hadn't authored, metrics he didn't understand, explanations he couldn't connect to the source material. And I said nothing, just took notes, laughed when appropriate, maintained the expression of a woman who'd already won, waiting politely for everyone else to realize it. When the breakfast ended, Elaine shook my hand a beat longer than necessary and said, "Don't be late for the 9:30. Greg flinched. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. But I swear, I heard the dirt hit the coffin lid. Lane entered the boardroom like a woman carrying a verdict. No laptop, no assistant. Just a leather folio under one arm and a single stack of papers in the other, printed, bound, and marked with color-coded tabs like she'd personally curated an autopsy report. Greg's eyes followed that stack like a condemned man watching the priest carry in the final rites. The rest of the room was already seated. Our CEO, two senior VPs from Tyrex, one from legal pretending not to exist, and me, silent, steady, holding nothing but a manila folder and the weight of every idea I'd ever had that someone else took credit for. Elaine laid the printouts neatly on the table, one copy for each of us. "Before we begin," she said, cool as chilled steel, "I want to revisit Section 4 of the proposal, the supplier consolidation matrix." Greg cleared his throat. Ah, yes, that was a joint effort. Lots of internal collaboration went into shaping that section. Elaine didn't look at him, she looked at me. "Marla," she said, "your name isn't on this version, but I've reviewed previous documents you submitted during our benchmarking workshops last spring. The tone, structure, even the routing logic, it matches your previous work. I'd like clarification on authorship." The oxygen left the room. Greg opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Well, I mean, all sort of. Built off the same framework, you know? Collective innovation, synergy, Jesus." He was trying to keyword his way out of a felony. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at Greg. I reached slowly into my folder, removed a single sheet of paper, and placed it on the table in front of Elaine. My drafts use version control, I said. This is the full edit log, dates, user IDs, IP addresses. You'll see timestamps aligned to every revision. All under my credentials, including Section 4, especially Section 4. Elaine picked it up, scanned it, nodded once. The CEO leaned forward, visibly unsettled now. Greg, he said carefully, did you pull this directly from Marla's drive? Greg made a sound like a car trying to start in winter. I accessed it for alignment, yeah. Just to consolidate, Elaine turned the page. You copied it, rebranded it, and forwarded it to our team under your name. Silence. Then, from the Tyrex director of ops, a quiet surgical question. So, who plagiarized whom? No one moved. Greg looked around like a man searching for exits that didn't exist. I sat motionless, hands folded, gaze calm, not triumphant, just finished. This wasn't about glory. This was about reality snapping back into place after years of bending around men like Greg. Years of being told to be a team player while someone else reaped the benefits. Years of polite nods, quiet sighs, and promotion cycles that always just missed me by one level. Now I was the level. And Greg was about to find out what falling felt like. Greg started grasping at words like they were helium balloons slipping out of his grip. Look, this was always a group effort, he insisted, sweat blooming just under his collar like ink in water. Bounce ideas around all the time, it's not about ownership, it's about alignment. Execution, the spirit of collaboration. He emphasized spirit like it was a religion and he'd just been caught stealing from the offering plate. Elaine didn't even blink. She gently closed the folder in front of her like sealing a tomb. Legal will sort that out, she said, voice smooth as glass. For now, we want Marla to lead implementation. The room didn't erupt. It didn't have to. It shifted, that subtle, unmistakable quake that happens when everyone at the table realizes they've been clapping for the wrong person. All heads turned toward me, the once invisible workhorse, now suddenly the center of gravity. I nodded once. That's it. No speeches, no I told you sauce. Just a quiet acceptance of what had already been true long before anyone had the courage to say it aloud. Greg's face fell through 5 different shades of disbelief. Wait, hold on. Marla. I mean, sure, she's great with numbers, but she's not client-facing. She's not, he made a helpless gesture toward the room, leadership. Elaine cocked her head, mildly amused. She just led your own proposal better than you did. That counts. The CEO looked like he'd swallowed a thumbtack. He turned to Greg, opened his mouth, then hesitated. What came out wasn't decisive, just a flat, Greg, can you give us the room? And there it was. The moment Greg realized he was no longer one of them. Not the brain trust, not the golden boy, just dead weight wrapped in buzzwords. He looked at me one last time like maybe I'd save him. Like maybe the woman he'd buried under 1,000 stolen slides and rebranded decks would throw him a rope. I didn't blink. He stood up slowly, scooted his chair back with a screech that sounded like surrender, and walked out of the room. He never came back. Char said nothing. Not during, not after. Just sat still, pen resting on a closed notebook, eyes on the wall like they were waiting for their own cue to disappear. And me? I sat with my hands folded, still calm, still centered, as the silence filled the space Greg had once polluted. No confetti, no standing ovation. Just that heavy, beautiful stillness that only comes when truth finally outruns the lie. 2 days later, Greg's name vanished from the org chart like a typo no one wanted to admit had ever existed. No farewell email. No wishing him well in his future endeavors. Just gone. A Slack message pinged the department channel late Friday afternoon, effective immediately. Implementation of the Tyrex initiative will be led by Marla M. Congratulations. No balloons, no banner, just a sentence. Like I'd always been the choice. The next day, my badge access changed. New floor, bigger office. Glass walls, if you're into that sort of thing. A company-issued MacBook waited on the desk with a note from IT that read, "Welcome to the team." I smiled, then ran my own encryption protocol before the damn thing even touched the Wi-Fi. Inside, nothing felt different. I was still the same woman who'd once eaten stale pretzels from her drawer while rebuilding a logistics model because some intern overwrote the shared file at 11:58 p.m. I still took the stairs. Still used the cheap coffee machine because the fancy one made the break room smell like regret and hazelnut, but now they came to me. I was looped in on every client call, copied on every budget doc. My name was listed first on the Tyrex implementation slides, right where his used to be. No more footnotes, no more help support, no more vanishing behind Greg's voice and hair gel. But it didn't feel like a triumph. Because here's what no one tells you about winning the quiet war. It costs you your voice. The story spread, of course. Whispers in meeting rooms, knowing looks in the elevator. I heard someone from marketing call it the heist that didn't work. A junior analyst high-fived me near the printer and whispered, legend. But officially, nothing happened. HR sat me down the following week and said, we're proud of how you handled things, but moving forward, let's keep the narrative focused on the team. No need to revisit details. I smiled, nodded, and imagined the sound Greg's hard drive made when they scrubbed it clean. They gave me authority but not spotlight, autonomy but not applause, power but only if I held it like it might be taken back at any moment. And that's fine. I don't need a parade. I don't want to stand in front of a projector and pretend to be inspired. I want clean numbers, fair credit, and the right to protect what's mine. So now I keep backups of everything. My files live in a cloud the company doesn't even know exists. Every doc gets watermarked. Every login gets monitored. They gave me the corner office. But I still sit facing the door. Because once you've been erased and clawed your name back from the void, you never stop listening for footsteps. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.